Hello folks and welcome to Tips and Tricks at 2 on Tuesday. So glad that you're joining us again. We are going to take a quick moment to remind you that the ruler work for beginners is still an available option. You can sign up on our website. Well, that's sort of a misnomer. What it really means is you can go to our website and then that'll link you on through to the So Steady site. But if you have a domestic machine and you've been thinking, I really want to learn to do my own quilting, and you want to use rulers to do it, this is the event for you. And if you happen to have a long arm and you're like, I don't know, maybe I could find some things to apply to it, hey, still a class for you. And it's going to cost you a whole lot of $0 to be able to enroll. So that one's going to be a good experience for anybody who's even remotely interested. So, like I said, we're looking at January 27th. There's still room for you to sign up. Go ahead and click on over and you guys will be ruler geniuses. Okay, well, beginner ruler geniuses. All right, let's take a moment and come back to our friends, our primary colored friends, because maybe you guys are thinking that this idea of doing a quilt for our little challenge competition is a good idea. Just a reminder that these guys are our friends who are going to do their primary job of giving us an opportunity to explore some primary color palettes and get excited about back to basics in 2021. So,
do you want me to show the rules or not?
Oh yeah, hey, you want to see the rules? Why don't you guys look at the rules for a minute?
Which are also on our website.
That's right, our rules are also on our website and they're posted in the store. And if you have questions, concerns, or think, I don't know if my quilt counts, please talk to us, please. All right, so last time we met, we discussed all kinds of things about design elements and we talked about movement in the fabric, it's in the colors. We talked about shape movement. We talked about blocks being put together and simple palettes and complex palettes, and we had a great time. And if you want to see it again, then YouTube has it right there for you. And you can watch it all over in its original live glory, only this time recorded. Okay, today we're going to spend some time thinking about the next step. So first you need to decide kind of what your quilt is going to be like, where it's going to go, the kind of tone that you wanted it to be. But the next step is you need to be able to put it together. And a really important part of being able to do that is cutting the fabric apart in the first place. The more accurate your cutting is, the more accurate your piecing is going to be. The more accurate your piecing is going to be, the more successful you are going to be at getting the quilt you want to get. So whether you are joining us in the competition or not, I'm hoping that we're going to be able to cover some tips for cutting that's going to be useful to you. So we have a smattering of things here on the table. And some of them are, you're going to be like, oh yeah, I recognize why we've got that on there. But how about the dish soap and the towel? Why, Sandy, did you bring a dish soap and a towel? Because the foundation of your cutting is right here. See this guy? If this guy is dirty, if this guy is full of lint, if this guy is warped, then some things need to happen. So, Becky, come back to me. If your board is warped, get a new one. This is not me from a quilt store telling you that I want you to buy my merchandise. This is me as a human being who wants you as a human being to be successful in accurate cutting. And if your cuts are going like this, they're not going to be straight. So just like the woodworker in the shop gets himself a new board when it goes like this. If your mat is getting warped and wonky, it is time to get you a new one. Don't put your mats in the car around here. That is scary business. The heat will cause them to like dance, and while dancing is fun, it is not useful as a tool for cutting. It's very useful as a tool for stress relief. So put it in its right place, okay? So why do we have soap and a towel? Because sometimes our mats are gonna get a little dry, a little brittle, a little dusty, a little encrusted with, you know, the remnants of that cheese sandwich we almost washed all the way off of our hands, those kinds of things. So laying your mat in the bottom of the bathtub with a squirt or two of soap, mine happens to be like this lovely purple tea tree lavender liquid dish soap that I use at my house, but you can use any kind of like generally, any good general dish soap. Put a couple of drops in your water, scrub your board. You want to go ahead and scrub because the board actually opens up as your blade slides through, and if your blade is dull and you're pressing fibers into that groove instead of like cutting them off clean, then you're gonna actually be able to see the cut lines on your mat, and it's time to wash it. So scrub it off. And if your mat is unreadable and you have crazy lines, it might be time to consider replacing that one as well. And then I want you to pull it out of the bathtub. I want you to dry it off with a towel. Then I want you to set it in a place to dry. Do not put it in the sun. Do not do it, or you will have to come and see me and you will have to buy a board that you didn't have to buy before, because then it will be dancing, and a dancing board is not helpful as a tool. So store it, let it dry, all the way air dry. I recommend laying it out on the towel and flipping it over from time to time because it is a porous surface. So when it's all the way dry again, you are ready to go. This good friend is going to be able to help you make clean lines, straight cuts, and all the cheese sandwich will be gone. Yay! Okay. So let's move on to the next random thing I have right here. Best press. Why? Because when you pull fabric out of the drawer and you say, that's good enough, it'll be fine. Don't do it. Like really, if you're trying to do something that is going to actually help you succeed at being very deliberate about your piecework, you don't want these throwing surprises your way. Go ahead and lay it out. Go ahead and take a moment to press it. And if you are going to be working into triangles or really fussy piecework or fine work or even a lot of narrow strips, your fabric, being a fluid thing, it's malleable, it's plastic in a way, and by plastic I mean malleable. Anyway, the point is, if you want to keep that within its parameters because you know what you're doing is going to be fine work, that's where our best press friend comes in. Just go ahead and give it a light, whoops, that's a stream. Okay, there we go. Oh, see, a nice spritz. And then press that down. What this is going to do for you is it's going to stabilize the fabrics. So, you know, the weave comes like this. And if I slice right here, then my weave can open up. Or if I just start pushing things around, I can shift my weave. Which is why if I'm doing a lot of narrow strips, I might want to go ahead and think about forming it up, and pressing it with a starch, because the starch is a sort of temporary glue at each of those points, and it increases the body. It's kind of like hairspray. It's like hairspray for your fabric, so it can be gorgeous when it goes to the groomers. Only normally we don't take ourselves to the groomers. We go to the hairdressers. Okay, so take time, make it beautiful, make it flat, When it's flat, then you can't accidentally get the cut that goes because you did this. So I know, I just made it flat, but we're gonna do a really exaggerated thing. See, I've got my fold in there, and when I try to cut across that, see, we've got, like, I cut straight, but I've got that really big nick taken out of it. This doesn't matter very much when I'm sewing a garment because I can make an adjustment in my seam allowance if I needed to, but it matters a lot when I need to square up against the next square, against the next square, against the next square. Okay? So let me check my notes. Okay, we have pressed. And guess what we sell? We sell the big friend so that you don't have to come to the shop so very, very often, and you can have all the most perfect, well-bodied, well-behaved squares while you cut, and triangles, and strips, and circles, and whatever else you need to sit still. And it's lavendery fresh. And guess what lavender does for your brain? Yeah, so there we go. Okay. The next step before we really, really get all the way into cutting, we've washed our board. We've checked that it's flat, we've pressed our fabric to make sure that it's flat, and now we're going to take a look at our rotary cutter. And I pulled these two, this one off the shelf, because I want to talk to you a minute about hands and about cutters. I particularly like this blade for two reasons. One, I should say this cutter handle. One, the handle is actually big enough that my hand does not have to get all the way into its smallest position. When knuckles have to come all the way into their smallest position and hold that, that is not ergonomically comfortable. But this bigger ruler is more comfortable. It's also more comfortable for joints that are beginning to experience arthritis and other things like that. The other thing I like about it is watch what happens when I let go. The blade puts itself away. Oh, and away. And away. These guys, when we're using them correctly, should be wicked sharp. Sharp enough to slice right through everything, including us, if we're not careful. So I really, really am a firm advocate for blades that put themselves away because it's just safer for everybody, ourselves and any animal people or smaller people who may be in our vicinity, and also safer for our feet in case we drop the blade. You can see I have gory images that I don't want you to participate in.
One question though.
Yes, what's the question?
How much is the gallon of best press?
The gallon of best press is $51.99. Is that available on our website? It could be available on our website, but just keep in mind it's heavy and you have to ship it, so I'd say come get it. Okay, so ergonomic handles are an awesome thing. Things that retract all by themselves are a great thing. This one does have the mechanism if you need it to stay for whatever reason, but I like that it shuts again. So, if you are cutting with a dull blade, if this guy is going nick, 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 then you're going to have to make multiple passes. Every time you come past, you run the risk of fudging it this way or that way, and therefore chewing the edge of the fabric instead of slicing through the fabric. So we want to make sure that you've got a good sharp blade. By way of demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to change the blade. The big knob, whether it's an Olfa blade or another one, is usually the one that sits against the blade itself. Flip it over until you find the little screw and nut. This is a point, did you see it was moving? We're going to go ahead and lock it in position. Open the nut up and pay attention. See how this little guy is smiling at you? See, so happy. I don't know if you can tell. Anyway, so it should be up and smiling. And we're going to set all of those guys aside. And I kind of like to stack it like that so that I remember where I came from. Flip it over, lift our piece out, and now we remember the sharp is the edge, and I want to handle that as flat as possible. Okay, I open up my new blade, and usually there's a couple of them when you first open the package. So I like to put my finger flat on the blade there, flip it over, and now I have the whole package. This one I happen just to have one, so we're gonna pretend that's my second one. And I slide my fingers like so until the blades slide off of each other. Then I can pick them up and separate from each other, okay? At the store, we keep these guys and we have written on it, old, so that we can make sure that we are handling, that we're throwing them away responsibly, because even when they're not sharp enough for fabric, they're still sharp enough to do damage. So don't just throw them away like this, because they could slice out of the garbage. Okay, so we put our blade down, our little nut guy goes back on, flip the whole thing over. See this little dusty bit? Go ahead and take a minute, clear that out. All right, I don't think, oh, there it is, there it is. Okay, okay, so sliding our piece back on, locking things in place again, and in reverse order, our little disc. Not all blades have this little disc. Then it has to smile, yay, smiling, and then we screw it back on. When your blade is actually sharp and you roll it along the mat, your hand should feel like it's kind of gripping along the way. If it's rolling smooth like a tire, it's smooth like a tire, which is not a good thing for a blade. So you want it to kind of grip as you roll along, and that's how you know that you've got a nice sharp blade. Take a moment, let's look at this cool little thing. This is a way that you can use those blades that we just replaced. You know, when you do long chain piecing, this little guy will help you not wear out the thread cutter on your sewing machine. All right, so you can use your old blades that way. And this is something we do have in the store, and we do have available online if that's a thing you want to follow up on.
And how much?
And how much? It is $25.99. I don't know how much the little replacement blade on your sewing machine is, but I'm thinking not only is this adorable, but it's a whole lot more accessible than your little sewing machine blade. All right. Let's check. We talked about starching. We talked about the sharp blade and the flat mat. Okay, now I want to talk to you about rulers. And we're going to do super overview of rulers because there are a million kinds of rulers and you can do a million kinds of different things with them. In general, I want you to know that there are rulers with lots and lots of lines, and there are rulers that are being sold as easy to read rulers with fewer lines. There are rulers that are black and white and rulers that are colored, and I do actually really like the creative grid rulers that we've got in the shop. And then we've got our long rulers, and then we've got square rulers, and we're not going to get super in-depth on that one, but I am going to use this one to talk to you a little bit about how to use your ruler for cutting rather than the mat, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about why that is in just a second. We also have the Stripology ruler that actually has the little groove in between. Can you see that? So there's actually a little spot for your blade to slide through. Okay, so here is a piece of fabric that's going to give us some contrast, I hope. Okay, when I line my fabric up on my board, I can't actually tell how far over the line I've gone right here, which is why I generally prefer to use my ruler as my reference, because then I can see precisely where I am on the fabric. So I use the interior of the ruler as my guide, and I kind of ignore the mat unless the fabric is larger than my ruler, and then I will use my mat as a guide. But I much prefer to make my cuts interior of the ruler. So let's look at that for just a moment. This ruler is telling me that from this edge into this line, my ruler is covering 6.5 inches. That means if I need 5.5 inches, then I want to slide my ruler over until my ruler is covering 5.5 inches, and this is the piece that I cut off. I always try to keep my ruler protecting the piece that I want to keep. And that way, I make my cut. This is my scrap. But if I were, as I was cutting, let's pretend. Okay, Becky, watch me cut. Let's pretend I'm new at cutting and I wandered away. See how I can't actually wander into my protected piece? I just am wandering into what I'm gonna throw away anyway. So, ruler covers what the measurement that I want to keep, and I slice on my edge. Take some time and make sure that you're thinking about your body while you're cutting. You should be able to hold your whole body up while you are making that cut. If you are leaning, let's see if I can do this. If you are leaning forward and the blade is supporting your body, bad things are gonna happen. So hold yourself upright, strengthen your core. It's good for you in lots of ways. Take a minute to breathe, feel your body, let the air in and out again. You should be able at any point to release what you're doing and still have your body upright. Otherwise, you run the risk of shoving your ruler and of shoving your blade and of things going crazy or cutting your mat really deep. Not only that, but it's not good for you as a quilter to not be holding your body upright. If you find yourself struggling with that, I would suggest you consider the height of your counter. So for cutting at this level, I'm fairly comfortable here. If it was mine and I was going to spend the next 4 hours, I would consider checking to see if I could get this up another 2 inches for my height, probably. And I might do that by putting blocks underneath the table. Or maybe I would lift a board up on top. I know there have been lots of quilter women who happen to be associated with woodworking guys who have made arrangements like that. But I also know some really clever people who've used blocks and books and whatnot to get their levels up where it's more comfortable for them. The more conscious you are about your body, the longer you can cut and the safer you can cut and the more accurate your cuts are gonna be. Okay? So use the interior of the ruler, hold your own body weight up, and don't feel like every single cut has to happen exactly like this. I have this whole table space. I can march my body around to the other side. So as I'm cutting this little guy, I can bring it around and I can cut this direction. I do not want to bring the blade across with my dumb hand. My dumb hand is not clever enough to be able to protect me or to make a straight cut. So if what I want to do is go that direction, I'm going to move my body. See me? All the way around, or all the way around, or I'm going to use my friend right here. Because this lets me get at every cut that I need to make without moving fabric or ruler, because the less often you touch this piece, the more accurate your alignment's going to be. So here are the guidelines. Don't lean on their mat, hold yourself up. Make the cut away from you or across from you with your smart hand. Do not use your dumb hand to cut the wrong way. Move your body. You use a rotating mat and leave the fabric on the mat as much as possible. Okay.
There's one question.
Yes.
When I have trouble straightening my fabric, any tips?
Straightening your fabric. I need a little more information about, are we talking about a clean cut or are we talking about your fabric's warped? So we'll give you a minute and I will keep talking on this one, okay? Because we are going to use this friend that we ironed out and we are going to say, just pulled you out of the drawer and now I want a clean cut. So, the place that's important for me to think about is if I eyeball a cut, then it means all of the rest of the successive pieces are only eyeball straight. Eyeballs are round, they're not straight. Use a ruler. Okay, Becky, come check out what's happening over here. Can you guys see this? You can. Okay, this is my fold. And again, I'm going to use the interior of my ruler. And I'm going to lay my ruler down so that on this black line, my fold disappears right under there. So see? So just hold steady. See, I can see my fold. We are not lined up. See where it disappears. And now I'm exactly in the right spot there. Okay, that's going to let me cut this line. So, Becky, I want them to see what my hands are doing. Okay, trade spots.
Well,
So if you can come around this way.
there's a lot of
Great.
glare.
There is a lot of
No,
glare.
we're good.
Okay, so what I want you to see is my hand is upright, and I think of it kind of like a spider. I've got most of the weight resting here and on my finger, on my middle fingertip, and I'm going to cut as far as my middle finger, then come back so you can see my thumb. I'm going to lift my thumb, and I'm going to spider walk it up this far, lift my finger, and come up. I pull open my little spot there so I can see up to my middle finger, walk it, and notice that like it has to lift up and down. And this is one of the places where if my body was being held up by my arm, this is a place where I would definitely start seeing things skew. So in general, your blade should not go beyond your finger. You should be walking your way up in order to get that straight, clean cut. Okay? So now I've cut this edge, and I know that it's great and beautiful, and I've taken my ruler off, and I might want to grab it and flip it around. If my workstation won't let me walk around, then I might consider that. But if I've got room to walk around, that's what I'm going to do. So, I've hemmed myself in, my friends. So we're going to turn the whole mat. And honestly, this is what I do at home. And for Becky's sake, we're going to go ahead and move it over here. Okay? So let's say I want 2-inch cuts. Normally, we would think, okay, there's our 2 inches, and cut it, and then scoot and 2 inches and cut it. And that's going to work pretty good for a lot of the time. But I can also increase my accuracy by coming over here. So let's come back down here. Do we need to shift so that we're not glaring so bad?
Yeah.
There we go, much better. Okay, so if I cut at the 2-inch and then I have to reference that for the next one out, whatever inaccuracy I had here is going to play out here as well. So when I can, I'm going to go ahead and give myself this and then scoot back. So 2 times is 4. So I've got my 4 inches under here, and let's look at the lining up right here. So see how they're lining up right on those dots? or are they? They're not, so let's shift it until they're lining up right on the dots. Now let's run down along here and see how are we doing.
Not good.
Not good, so let's do a shift again until we've got everybody actually lined up.
Yep.
Taking time to do this gets faster with practice. There's the 10,000 hour rule that says if you want to be really successful at something, it's going to take you 10,000 hours of deliberate practice. 10,000 hours of sloppy practice will make you a sloppy expert. But if you really want to get so that your skills are super crisp and you're able just to do it, then go ahead and take the time to be slow and line it up. And I can promise you, pretty soon your hands and your eyes will be doing it without you. Okay? So here's my 4 inches in. And I'm going to start with my thumb back here, cut as far as my finger, up on my finger and walk, and up on my finger and walk. Okay? Then you notice that I took away the fabric from the outside of the ruler edge and I left my ruler stationary. Now I can scoot it back down here, and I'm going to line up right here, and I'm going to line up right here. And now I'm going to go ahead and do my little spider walk to the middle finger and off. And now I have 2 strips that are 2 inches wide, and I didn't have to reference myself all the way around. I mean, the fewer copies of copies that you can do, the more accurate you're going to be. I hope that makes sense. I know that this process for some is uber tedious. They do not love it. And that is where the stripology ruler comes into play. So, oh look, it's a crease. It came right out of the drawer. I'm gonna do it good. I'm gonna model the behavior I want to see in your competition quilts because you guys are gonna be like the most amazing quilters ever. Okay. Now, this one happens to be a fat quarter. And I'm going to treat it like it's a full width of fabric, and we're going to fold it down shorter. You'll notice I only pressed this area because I just figure I'm going to cut you a few strips. I don't need the whole thing, but I didn't want you to have to wait for me, okay? So I'm going to fold up here, and if you want to use your mat to help you reference whether or not it's straight, so my fold is basically on one line here, okay? And then I'm going to sight up here and check to see that that things are even. Like we're not doing this, but that things are generally even. Now we take our stripology ruler. We've got this dotted line along the outside edge, which is a nice visual reference because trying to use the groove as the place where we're lining things up it tricks our eyes. Okay, and then we're going to slide down. So see, watch the bottom. See how it's going to disappear right under the black line. Whoop. That's exactly where we want to be. So now you'll notice that up here,
It's just right
do we need to just turn it off?
there.
Okay,
It's
awesome.
I'm holding the
Good.
camera crooked, but
Good job, Becky. Okay, so you can see that we're far away here, but we're right on here, which indicates we need a clean cut. So, using the stripology ruler, we're gonna just go ahead and slide right on up. And now we can just count over our 2 inches. Oh, see what's happening up here?
what?
Okay. See how I can't actually cut all the way through? We need to shift things up. So it's harder for the camera, but now I've moved things here so that it's lined up on the white line so that I can clear up here. Otherwise, that cut isn't made all the way through. So we're going to scoot things over. New clean cut right here. Over 2 inches. And make that cut. And notice how the blade comes all the way in there. And I could keep going all the way across. So I could do my 4, 6, 8, blah, 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 blah. So I get a whole series of cuts from one alignment, which is why people love this ruler. So see, that's what we can do there. So that's one way to get your super speedy cuts. People are often tempted, especially when it feels like I have to do a bazillion million, to go ahead and stack things up really high and say, yes, now I can cut 50 pieces of fabric all in one go. I am a genius. Actually, what happens is you have a tendency to get a lot of slippage. So what I have stacked up here, let's find out how many there are. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 is too many. Don't do it. Why? Okay. When I lay my ruler, okay, I don't know. Can you see it, Becky? Do you see the gap between the mat and the board? Okay, sort of. Anyway, the point is there is a gap. And my whole ruler is starting to bend over this giant bump in the road that I've created. So it has a tendency to act like, what's the word? Okay, you know when it's up on this point and then the thing and it rises up above it? Apex. No, it's still the wrong word. Anyway, it has a tendency to lift it upright so that you can't have the traction of the whole ruler. So it's really easy to pivot. It's also a lot harder to get all the way through without shifting things. So I have to apply, this is my normal pressure, and that's not getting me through anything. So I have to increase the pressure. But I'm also realizing this that my hand is doing is a warning sign. Do you see how flat my hand is and how my wrist is coming straight off that and I'm pressing straight down? This is really, really bad for my wrist, especially if I have any kind of carpal tunnel, anything. If I'm not feeling secure with my hand upright and better supported for carpal tunnel, I am not making a cut that's going to be safe or clean. Okay? So, moral of this story is keep your stacks small enough that you can actually handle them. If you feel things starting to shift in the layers of fabric, you have too many. There are some people who are able to do more than others. Part of that is just about practice. Part of that is about being able to feel what the fabric can do as you start to make those cuts. But take your time. This is supposed to be enjoyable, so go ahead, take your time. Final thing, somebody asked me earlier today in the store how to create squares. So we're going to take just a second and we're going to look at the strips that we've got here. And I want to show you how to stack them. Fabric, like I told you, is stretchy, and we can warp it. Do you see how the threads are giving way? And now that's not going to lay still. So if we tug on it too much, we can make a straight thing become something else entirely. In order to stack my strips so that I can cut many squares at a time, notice that I'm laying the top corner down, and then I put my finger there, and now I gently move the whole strip until I can see about a hand's breadth. Over here, things are lined up well, and then I'll lay down the next strip. If I want to adjust the stack, and I pull like this, do you see how I'm getting movement between the two layers like that? That's an important thing to understand if you've got more than two layers. It means your top piece is going to be moving more than your other piece. So we have a tendency to want to lay down our fabric and pet it, and then lay down our next piece and pet it. But what happens is we start petting it out of shape. So lay it down, put the next one down, and pivot it into alignment. Then pick up your next one and pivot it into alignment. By the way, if you guys are loving this fabric, we still have this in the shop. It's the mosaic stuff. So now I've got this good, nice line. And I'm going to give it a clean cut, but I want my nice turning board. Come here. Okay. Clean cut, move down. Flip that guy around. And we're going to say that we want 3-inch squares out of this. So I have not clean cut here. I have not clean cut here. I'm going to lay this so that my edge just disappears underneath the ruler. Okay. Now I'm going to pivot again. And here, I'm going to use my ruler again to help me. I'm looking where it just disappears up there and it just disappears down there. And then I've got all the layers over here. Okay. Now I can work my way across. So if I happen to have 6 inches, which I do, I can now cut at 6 and back off and cut at 3. And that will give me, oh, did you see that shift? I hope you saw that shift, because that is the shift that makes it unwise to do more than, I would say, as a beginner, I would start with 4 layers of fabric and I would max out at 6. If you're feeling like super confident and your ability, and you've got the technique down, but I wouldn't go any more than that because you really are going to start skewing things. Okay. Ruler slippage can be addressed by a couple of different things. One is to buy the rulers that have the little grippy dots on them. Okay, so all of our Creative Grids rulers have the grippy dots built into them. Or you already have rulers. We have little grippy dots that just go on the back of it. It acts like see-through sandpaper in that it just helps hold things a little bit more stable. Okay, ruler, one of the other things is don't use a ruler longer than you actually are comfortable with. If you need a shorter big square one, go ahead and do that. If you are more comfortable with the long guy, take your time, walk your hand. That is going to work out better for you. Okay, so now you've got things, you've got your ruler and your rotary cutter and your mat, everything's looking good. Let's think a little bit about triangles and curves. So the drunkard's path, I should have brought a picture with me. The drunkard's path is a square that has a little arc in it. Drunkard's path and triangles often are a place where we have a harder time getting them sewn up so that they, when we open them back up again, that they're actually square the way they need to be, that things are lining up, because those are areas where we tend to get into some of the biasy effects of our quilting fabric. So if you're doing triangles or anything with curves, just make the block a little bit bigger so that you can cut it down to the size that you need. Bump it up by 1/4 of an inch. It's not going to cost very much fabric, and it's going to help you a lot get everything trimmed up. We'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow, but I think that is everything for you. No, it's not. Here's the last tip. In order to help your cutting accuracy, breathe. I'm not even kidding. Breathe. Make sure that the lungs are being full of oxygen, that you are relaxed enough that the breath is coming in and out, because if you're breathing, you're thinking, your brain is fed, your body is relaxed, your shoulders can drop, and you don't end up with tight, terrible cutting, but you can be like, oh yeah, I'm learning how to do this. This is awesome. Okay? That concludes tips and tricks, unless there are any other questions that are scrolling through.
I haven't seen any.
All right, you guys. Thank you so much for joining in. We'll see you again next week.